I recently moved into a house in a small town, fully bought and paid for. The house is 3 stories tall, with 4 bedrooms and 3 baths, and the backyard offers a beautiful view of the woods. It seemed odd to me that such a big house was so cheap. Now I know why. About a week after I moved in, strange things started happening. First, there were power outages, then strange sounds from the woods, and random shadows crossing the trees. At first, I thought it was just my imagination or the quirks of living in an old house in the middle of nowhere, but gradually the situation worsened. A few weeks later, I could have sworn I saw the trees moving, not swaying in the wind, but actually shifting. I brushed it off as my imagination. Then one day, I came home from work to find my garage door open. Someone had broken in. I ran inside, hoping to catch whoever did it, but strangely, nothing was missing. Instead, I found a strange stack of twigs and leaves. I called the police and asked them to keep an eye on the neighborhood. I swept the bundle of leaves into the street and tried to forget about it. That night, I went to bed but was awakened by a blood-curdling scream of pain, unlike anything I'd ever heard from an animal. It was horrifying, and I felt real fear. The scream continued all night, stopping only when the sun came up. This happened every night. On the 5th night, exhausted and desperate, I grabbed my gun and flashlight and ventured into the woods to find the source of the noise. The sound grew louder and more painful as I ventured deeper into the woods. My head felt like it was tearing apart, and my ears were bleeding. Then I saw it. It was 10 feet tall, standing on all 4s, covered in bush, bark, and scales. Its maw was open, revealing 3 rows of sharp, barbed teeth. Its yellow, reptilian eyes glared at me. I only caught a glimpse, but it was enough to imprint the image in my mind forever. I turned to run, but more of these creatures emerged from the ground with the same horrific screeching. I sprinted back to the house and locked the door behind me. That's when I realized the stack of branches in the garage. The garage door was big enough to let these things in. Somehow, they had opened it. I grabbed my laptop and locked myself in the small basement, too confined for them to enter. The deafening sound continues to tear at my soul. By morning, this sound had subsided and peace of mind returned. Months have passed since that night. I moved to another apartment. A semblance of normal life has appeared in the city. The constant hum of urban life was in stark contrast to the silence of the forest. For a while, I allowed myself to believe that I was safe. But one evening, the peace was disturbed when I returned to my apartment and found a small pile of twigs and leaves on the kitchen floor. It was unmistakably recognizable, the same creepy trail that I encountered in the last house. My heart sank and cold sweat broke out on my forehead. They found me again. I hurriedly packed my bag, knowing that I couldn't stay. This time, there was no hesitation. I didn't bother explaining to my friend. I simply told him I had to leave immediately. As I drove away from the city, fear gripped me like never before. The creatures, whatever they were, had followed me. The road stretched ahead, dark and seemingly endless. Every shadow seemed to morph into a lurking figure, every rustling leaf a harbinger of their presence. I drove through the night, unable to shake the feeling that I was being watched, pursued by an unseen menace. Hours passed before I dared to stop, pulling into a deserted gas station on the outskirts of another town. The attendant eyed me warily as I filled up my tank, sensing my unease. I wanted to warn him, to tell him to leave. What could I say? Who would believe my story? I pressed on, the miles blurring together in a haze of exhaustion and fear. Finally, I arrived at a motel on the edge of a sleepy town. The receptionist gave me a curious look as I checked in, my hands trembling as I signed the register. I locked myself in the room, every sound amplified in the silence of the night. Sleep eluded me once more. The events of the past months replayed in my mind, each detail etched with terrifying clarity. How had they found me again? What did they want? The questions tormented me, gnawing at my sanity like a relentless predator. Dawn broke, casting a faint glimmer of hope through the curtains. I knew I couldn't stay here long. The creatures had proven relentless, unyielding in their pursuit. My only chance was to keep moving, to stay one step ahead of them. And so, I sit here now, my laptop open before me, pouring out these words in a desperate bid for understanding. I can't take it anymore. If you ever encounter a mysterious pile of branches inside your house, notice trees moving on their own, or, God forbid, hear that terrible noise, run. Move to the city and never look back. But it's too late for me. They're in my head. I can hear them beckoning me with a noise so dreadful it would make the devil himself scream in agony. Hell would be an improvement over that noise. I don't know where I'll go next or how long I can outrun them, but I will not surrender, not yet.